Genesis 1 verse 1.
God created.
Yes.
That should speak a lot.
That should tell us a lot. It should.
Especially for made in his own image.
Yep. We see that in the very beginning, God did a work of art. He introduces himself. And we know that God is very intentional, you know? The order of scripture is intentional. The way in which God reveals himself within scripture is intentional.
Yeah.
And so the fact that our first point of reference with God is him doing an artistic work should tell us that artistry is a huge component of Christ-likeness, you know? It's not the primary one. We know that primarily God is love. But artistry can be an extension of that love. All right, Psalms and Screens, Artistry Reclaimed, the podcast, Season 1, Episode 0.
Take one.
Oh, take one. Y'all get it.
Yeah.
Artistry Reclaimed, the podcast that is an extension of our conversations.
It's been a long time coming.
It has been.
It has been a long time coming. Over 2 years.
It's been well over 2 years of us saying, we should actually record this conversation.
And that's how everything was birthed. We had a lot of conversations and they're like, we should actually record this. I don't know how many times we've said this. But the actual origin of it was...
Back in 2020?
During lockdown.
I hit him up. After, I think we hadn't spoken for like a year at that point.
Yes. Because we come back sometimes on the holidays, got December.
And then we'd like reconnect when we're both in. So our parents live in the same town. It's a small town called Berlin in the Eastern Cape. And we grew up together. So we have a friendship that's been on and off. And as I think everyone with childhood friends would know, your friendship is on and off. It's not technically off, but like you guys don't talk. You go through periods where you don't talk. Then you talk a lot. Then you don't talk. And so our friendship had those waves as well. And so it was 2020 and I was talking to my mom and she was like, yo, I was in my car and like, I don't know what song she was listening to. And it really, like she was really having this moment with the Lord. And she was like, but like the way that this song is written is Xhosa, man. Like it doesn't hit it doesn't hit the same in English. Like, I wonder what these people were thinking. And so she was having these conversations with herself about the experiences of people who translated the hymns. And she was like, it would be great if actually the stories could be documented, especially because Suyaze, who is our neighbor technically, was a part of that process in Lusekona. So she was like, you should actually like document their stories. And she was like, you should work with Humangalisa. I was like...
Because the last experience of me was in 2012.
No, it wasn't in 2012.
Well, the most vivid experience yam is 2012. Like, she despises my 2012 era.
Teenage Mangaliso was a mess.
What's wrong with
To give you context, we were at a camporee. So this is like a camp for like Pathfinders. If you're not familiar, Pathfinders are the Adventist version of Scouts, I guess. People who are very like deep into pathfinding hate it when you define it that way. So I'm so sorry if that's an offensive way of describing it. And so we were at this camp, and Umangalisa at this point, he had moved to another town. So he was there with his like church at the time. And so it was one of those times where our friendship was on and off. And so he was playing the drums and whatever. And the girls were mad about man because he was really good. I can't deny. He was really good at playing the drums. And his head was huge because he was good and he knew it. And the girls were crazy about him. And I was just like, keep me away from this man. Keep me away. I know the Mangaliso who played with rocks on the ground and we were kids together. And now he's acting like... So anyway... So when Mama
my
mom was like, you should work with the manga on this thing. I was like, okay, if I have to.
And I went to your place, bro. Like, why didn't I don't go?
And this is the thing.
I would go to your place, even when you're not there, and go and hang out.
Yeah, Mangaliso and I are practically family because our parents are friends.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of overlap in terms of our lives.
Sure.
And so, So yes, you are right. We were still in each other's lives, but like...
On and off.
Itamba manga would just turn me off sometimes. It's like, keep this man away from me.
I've grown. Guys have grown.
But
I've grown.
But because it's family, there's still love. It's always love. So, moving along swiftly.
So from there, we did the documentary, which we hope you have currently watched.
If you haven't,
that's why it's Okjonga.
If you haven't, what are you doing?
Please watch the documentary. It's technically that, giving flowers to the people that were involved in the translation of Kristo Ngomeni.
And it's also just like telling their stories, and having their stories come from them directly.
Yes.
But we won't go deep into that. That's not what the space is for.
Then after that, while we're still in the process of doing it, we would have conversations like how we're doing. I'm like, yes, this would be a nice podcast because we have many interesting conversations. One of them being the fact that when I went to Kwaita's place, there was a black book, right? The black book was actually, let me get there, I don't like Kwaita, right? I have a love-hate relationship. Why? Because I'm an artist, I enjoy creativity. And I only found out that Ukwai is a creative in 2020. How long have you known each other?
After knowing me for more than half my life. We've known each other for like almost 20 years now.
This is sad. No, this is that made me angry. So which is why I was very,
he was touched.
Then he touched.
He was touched.
Quite as an artist book, I mean. And I want to see it. And then
he reached for the book.
I want to see it.
And I felt my organs come together and want to exit my body through my mouth because that art book is sacred. And like no one except for my parents, and my parents also have only seen some paintings in that book. No one has like seen all the stuff inside the book. And so I was like, no, Manga can't get it. And I leaped and I was like, gah! And I got my art book. And to this day, Umangalis was on my case about like seeing the art book.
So the reason I brought up that story is the conversation between the two different types of artists, right?
Yeah.
Me being the expressive one, who likes putting my work out there, and compared to quite a live,
I kind of keep my art to my chest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which inhibits growth, right?
Wow, look at you shading me. Wow. You just threw shade at me. Wow.
Okay.
The people just heard you drag me by my edges
and
say that I haven't grown.
Okay, let's look at it objectively. My apologies. I'm joking.
We've had this conversation.
We've had this conversation.
Yeah.
We're looking at the objectives like, hey, do you not want to grow into the artistic space?
Sure.
Do you not want to grow creatively and all of those things? And all of the things that you need to do is to put yourself out there.
Sure.
Because that is the only way you can collaborate.
To do so.
I mean, you have collaborated under a name that I still do not know.
Behind the scenes. No, he will never know. So for context, wow, language. I have been creating art for as long as I can remember. The first song I started and finished was in grade 1, and I remember performing it for my grandma, and like it was it felt like I was bearing my soul, and so I've been writing songs, poems, drawing, painting for as long as I can remember.
Sure.
But I've never shared that with people publicly, and the times where I have, it's been under a pseudonym. So I had a Tumblr back in the day where I put up all my poems and the song lyrics that I came up with, and these quotes, and I'd like have these like nice backdrops to like my quotes and whatever. And that also had a SoundCloud.
Sure.
With a different pseudonym, so that if anyone found my first pseudonym, they wouldn't find. You know what I mean? Like,
people in the comment section. This is when we're talking about the comments. Please, in the comment section, vote that we find out what is quite a pseudonym. Both of them, or maybe all three of them.
Please don't waste your energy. Please just don't waste your energy and don't do it.
We deserve it.
Maybe in the future. But I won't share my SoundCloud though, because I was in a very different space spiritually when I wrote the songs that I put out on my SoundCloud. So
which is
we won't be sharing those things.
Makes this podcast quite interesting or quite fruitful to us, is because we're coming from two different perspectives.
Yes. So I think as you've created only for Christian audiences, right? And for me, and as much as the first song that I wrote was a Christian one, my art, or the history of my art looking backwards, has been very mixed. I've had secular pieces, I've had Christian pieces. And so so the point is to approach these conversations from these different point of views, from someone who is a known artist to someone who's a closeted artist. And both of us coming from the Christian conservative space, which tends to trivialize artistry, if that's the right word. There's a tendency to think that artistry is superficial and not meaningful, and it's very much taken for granted. And so we were like, we want to create conversations, one, that will prompt artists to see worth in the gifts that God has given them. We want to prompt artists to see that those gifts are worth being used for God's glory.
Yes.
And additionally, we want people from conservative and traditional spaces to have spaces where they can go and find other people from a similar setting, but with a similar mindset in terms of like.
I mean, one of the first things we're introduced to God as, this is for the people who are conservative and traditional, is God
for everyone.
creating. Actually, it's for everyone.
It's for everyone.
It's God creating.
Genesis,
God being an artist.
Genesis
In
1
the
verse
beginning,
1.
God created.
Yes.
That should speak a lot.
That should tell us a lot. It should.
Especially for made in his own image.
Yep. We see that in the very beginning, God did a work of art. He introduces himself. And we know that God is very intentional,
Yes, yes,
The
yes.
order of scripture is intentional. The way in which God reveals himself within scripture is intentional.
Yeah.
And so the fact that our first point of reference with God is him doing an artistic work should tell us that artistry is a huge component of Christ-likeness, It's not the primary one. We know that primarily God is love, but artistry can be an extension of that love,
Which reminds me of actually the conversation we had of, look, the purpose of why I want to do this is that I want to die empty, number one. The reason being, when I was conversing with Ukwai back in 2020, I had realized that many people, right, who have died in the grave, leave the grave as being the most richest place ever. Well, I phrased that incorrectly. I don't know. So the grave becomes the richest place ever to have ever existed. Reason being, there are things that were supposed to be created that are not created. There are unwritten books. There are uninvented inventions. There are unwritten songs which could have soothed the soul. There are unsolved problems which would have solved many worldly issues that we have.
Sure.
But because abantu bazothini syndrome.
Ooh.
This is a hint to our first episode, obviously since episode 0. Abantu bazothini syndrome. People don't do those things.
Yeah.
And one of the things we want to do after having glorified God is to edify people.
Yes.
Paul speaks about the fact that in 1 Corinthians 13, that is it 13 or 14 or 12? But 1 Corinthians, he mentions that I would rather have you edify the entire community than to edify yourself. And this is where we come in from our different perspectives.
Yes.
Because we want to glorify God and want people to be edified. In what way? Reskill, build confidence, and you know, I just had more visions.
Who are we right now?
But anyway, that's literally the gist of what we want to pull off with Psalms and Screens as a whole. But now with Artistry Reclaimed is to have these perspectives, and also there'll be more people.
We'll definitely have people joining us
than us to talk about these things.
So while this will be a topic-based podcast, meaning that it won't be an interview type podcast where when people come on, we interview them on their experiences exclusively. We will have people join us to discuss various topics. Mm-hmm. And so we are hoping that if you guys have any topic suggestions, that you will leave them in the comment section. I just feel so like...
It feels so cheesy. It feels so cliche. Please comment on the comment section. But anyway, it's a conversation, guys. It's supposed to be, we're letting you into our space of the conversations we have as friends, and want to extend it out to people, again, for the glorification of God.
Ultimately.
I think it's very important that we do mention that God must be glorified in
first
this,
and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Secondly, the edification of mankind, so that they are brought closer to God through the best means we have possible.
Yes.
That's basically it.
Yeah.
And I've already hinted the first episode, Bazotini Abantu syndrome, because it's a thing.
It's a real struggle that I think a lot of people face, and this is from having had conversations with various people in various spheres of life. And you find that the primary thing that stops people from progressing is Bazotina Bantu.
Hey,
but we'll discuss that further.
Further in the first episode. For now is episode 0. I don't know. I feel like we did what we usually do in our conversations, where we go off tangents, but try and bring it close to home. So you'd find that there's a lot of unfinished stories. We apologize in advance. We really do apologize in advance. Hey, we try. we try.
So.
But so basically that's just Artistry Reclaimed
in a nutshell,
under Psalms and Screens, and we're happy that you guys are going to be joining us, and share to your friends. Again, this is so cheesy. Share to your friends, your family. They get so that they get edified. Naboge, and they can find themselves glorifying God and praising God with us.
Wow.
I don't know. Are we supposed to be laughing classes in Nojal?
No.
Sometimes they do.
No. The proclamation itself is not what's funny. It's the fact that like
It's
kuyenza ngokwesiqhelo. You know what I'm saying? It's like
So when I preach, when you're coming to the conclusion of what
Yeah.
you usually say,
Yeah.
you say that.
So this is how you're telling the people that we're coming to the end now of episode 0. But yeah, please be a part of the conversation. As we mentioned at the beginning, this is an extension. This podcast is an extension of conversations that we have going on amongst us as friends. And so we are bringing you into the friendship. Be a part of the conversation. Please, if you want to talk to us via our various social media platforms, which will be in the description box, please do so.
Even our emails. Like
Our
send an
email.
Like we
This
have
is
an
how
actual
serious we
email.
are, guys.
On
We've got
top
an
of the fact that
email.
it's not just a Gmail.
No.
We have our own domain.
What is that?
Anyway, that's how
What
serious
is
we are.
this?
Please take us. That's okay. Without being jokey, it's very important that you as an individual take yourself seriously. I think it's something on top of the Bazotina Bantu, which we'll discuss further. That as an artist, you need to take yourself seriously
Yes.
so that other people can take you seriously. Anyway, we'll discuss that further between. I feel like
Mangathan Basurias, guys.
I feel like we might as well start to episode
Just
one.
do it one time.
So join us again next time on Artistry Reclaimed. My name is Kwai.
My name is Manga. And this was episode 0 of Artistry Reclaimed.
Bye.